Before we begin today's video, I'd like to give a shout out to one of our newest subscribers, Underhill. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. It must be Undrill. Either case, thank you for subscribing, and welcome to the family. And now on with today's special video. Gathered friends, listen again to the tales of the Bionicle. Bionicle is a set of Lego construction. It's a line from the Lego series. More specifically from the Technic series of Lego. Sort of their third attempt at a action figure Lego series. And I loved it as a kid. Mostly the three movies, though the third movie was technically a part 2 to the second movie. Then there was the fourth movie, which tried to jumpstart a secondary series, which didn't pan out, unfortunately. I kind of liked the fourth movie, which is a shame, since nobody ultimately did. It wasn't the best. My favorite was number 3, Web of Shadows. But in either case, we are taking a look at the Toa from the Bionicle series. In the Matoran universe, Toa means hero. So when you hear Ta Matoran or Ta Toa, it is referring to the Toa, or hero, of fire. Ta Toa. Matoran is just the children, youth, the pre-teen stage. I don't know the exact classification of Matoran, I just know they are the youth stage. But in the 3 movies, 4 movies technically, but we're talking about the 3 movies from the Matoran universe, we have 6 base elements that we are going to be covering today. There are more. A lot more. But we're going to cover the 6 main ones, which we know from the first 3 movies. Fire, air, water, ice, earth, and stone. Which I can hear some snickering because Pathfinder 2nd edition doesn't exactly have a difference between water and ice or earth and stone. They kinda sorta do, but it is not that big. And this difference between earth and stone is actually not exactly clear in the Bionicle universe either. There is a difference, mostly their color, but there's not much beyond that. There's a little bit, but we'll get into that here in a moment. Now, each of the Toa and Matoran, as well as Turaga, are powered by a Kanohi, or a mask. These masks are made from molten protodermis, or a Kanoka disc, seen on the bottom left-hand side here. Matoran and Turaga, who do not wear a mask, will fall into a coma or even die if they have no mask for a long period of time. Toa without a mask are just a bit weaker, but suffer no additional ill effects. They just are a little bit weaker than they normally would be without a mask. They're still able to use their elemental powers, though it's just a weaker state. Most of the Kanohi have additional powers that the Toa can tap into, such as the Mask of Concealment, letting the Toa who wears it also have the ability to turn invisible. With that being said, let's go ahead and move on. If you're looking for any additional lore from the Bionicle universe, I would recommend checking out the channel Amaja Nui Tales. They were actually a resource I used for when I was researching some of today's topic, which today is actually a new series for the channel, Pathfinder Hero Frame Blueprint, where I'll be taking a look at an interesting concept that I've either heard of or come with myself and see how it would work in Pathfinder 2nd Edition for a playable character. So let's go ahead and get on with this concept. Since the race of Matoran, Toa, and Taraga are biomechanical beings, Bionicle, we need a biomechanical race. A mechanical but organic race. So the ancestry that I thought best fit with the Bionicles would be the android, which we have a video covering the lore of the android and other possible builds in the main Hero Frame series, if you wanted to check that out. The android will give us 8 hit points, a size of medium, speed of 25 feet, ability boost will be dexterity, intelligence, and 1 free ability boost. However, they do have a flaw in charisma. For your languages, you have Common and Androphon, you have low light vision, you have the constructed features, and emotionally unaware, since you do have a problem with communicating with other creatures besides the android ancestry. Now for our heritage, and since we are talking about different elements, it makes sense to go with the Genie-kin ancestries. These are the Ifrit, Sylph, Undine, Oryid, and also the Suli, though the Suli do not come up in this video. Since each one has their own particular element, let's go ahead and take a look at each one and what ancestry feat they might take at first level. For the Toa of Fire, it makes sense to go with the Ifrit, since they are the Genie-kin of elemental fire. They get the ancestry feat of either Inner Fire or Lava Soul, since some Toa of Fire are able to manipulate magma and lava, as well as any other sources of heat. Next is the Toa of Air, which goes for the Sylph, and the Sylph heritage. For your ancestry feat, Wind-tempered makes the most sense. Next is Undine for the Toa of Water. For their ancestry feat, I thought Tide Hardened makes the most sense. Next is Ice, which also takes the Undine heritage. Though for their ancestry feat, we will be going with the Rime Soul, since the Rime Soul Undine are based on elemental ice, or frozen water. Next is our 2 strange ones. We have the Toa of Earth and the Toa of Stone. Now, I might have to mention that each one of the Toa do have color differentiations, with the Toa of Earth being the color black, while the Toa of Stone is the color of brown. Which is kind of where some of these differentiants come into play, is their color and also where they live. The Toa of Earth, as well as the Matoran of Earth, live underground and are miners, with an E. Prospectors and miners and people who deal with the Earth. While those of the Stone are high up on the mountaintops and are excellent climbers. So for the Earth, the best ancestry feats I can think of are the Dust Soul, the Gem Soul, since they are dealing with the mines and with special crystals, and the Elemental Eyes, since they are able to see better in the dark than any other type of Matoran or Toa. For your Toa of Stone, I thought the ancestry feat of Steady on Stone and Silent Stone made the most sense. We will get into differentiants when we get into the skill feats. Next is our background. Most Toa were created as Toa, with a special mission, mostly to protect the Matoran from any threats. This best fits with the background of otherworldly mission, since most Toa have a special mission to protect the Matoran. Now, there have been cases where a Toa will deny their destiny, their duty, or even the unity with their other Toa and strike out alone and perhaps even go against their fellow Toa. This has happened a couple times within the Bionicle universe. One mentionable case is actually the Toa known as Nidiki.
This time, your farewell will be forever, brother.
You lost the right to call me brother long ago.
That brings a whole new meaning to that line from that second movie. Though, that does bring up the question of how he got this insectoid form. You'll probably have to watch the video Imaginary Tales released for Nidiki to find that out. Anywho, the ability boost for the otherworldly mission background are Wisdom or Charisma with one free ability boost with a trained skill in Religion. Now, as far as the duty goes for a Toa, some Toa will start out as a Matoran and become a Toa through some sort of special means when their duty or destiny has become known. When they realize what the destiny is supposed to be, they become a Toa, usually through a special artifact known as a Toa Stone. And once a Toa has completed their destiny, like we see in the end of the second movie with the Toa Metru, they will give up most of their Toa powers and become Turaga, who are the elders and leaders of the Matoran. So with that in mind, we might have backgrounds that fit with the Matoran life that we once had before we would become a Toa. So for that case, I have this list of backgrounds that fit the Matoran based on the jobs that they had prior to becoming a Toa and fulfilling their destiny. For the Toa of Fire, these were the mask makers back in Ta Metru, so Alloy Smith and Artisan made the most sense. On Mata Nui, this sort of changed a bit. They became farmers, so farmhand and warriors. The guard and the warrior made sense. And also, they played a special sport known as Koli. And they were also lava surfers. So it did make sense to go with the background of Attention Addict. For Lee, the Toa and Matoran of Air, the Attention Addict goes just as well, since they played their own special game where they hop into a chute on a board and try to dodge oncoming debris. Very weird stuff. Anyway, next is the Animal Wrangler and Sky Rider, because they have a special set of warriors that ride a special type of Rahi, or beast. So it makes sense to go with these two backgrounds. Next is the Driver, Trailblazer, and Entertainer. Again, going off of the fact that they are doing a special sport, but they also, in Lee Metru, in Metru Nui, they were test drivers for their vehicles to make sure that they were up to code. And these were a special type of vehicle that were meant to go fast. So yeah, it made sense for Thrill Seeker, Trailblazer, and Driver. Next is your Translator, since some Matoran were translators in the Motunui era. Next is your Water Matoran, the Gar Matoran. Astrologers, deckhand, deep-sea divers, field medics, fight breakers, food trader, guard, merchant, nocturnal navigator, pearl diver, sailor, teacher, tide watcher, tinker, traveler, undersea enthusiast, warrior, and wave-touched. Much like with the Matoran, they were a set of guardians when they had no Toa around, some of their military forces. But when they weren't warriors, they were actually teachers, scholars. They would teach other Matoran about different things. So it makes sense to go with a teacher background, but they were also piloting ships, sometimes even boat races. So yes, a sailor sort of makes sense for this. And Gar Matoran were also in charge of trade, so food traders sort of make sense for this, as well as merchant. And since they were teachers, they were also navigators in sort of way, so it made sense to go with the Nocturnal Navigator. And since you are a sailor of a ship, it makes sense to have the astrologer background, so you know where you're going by looking at the stars. Next is the Co-Matoran, Matoran of Ice. These are the individuals that look to the future to see what is to come. These Matoran will take up the academic background, acolyte background, astrologer background, astrological augur, bibliophile, bookkeeper, doom caller, fortune teller, mystic seer, and scholar. Next is the Matoran of Earth. Like I said, these were mostly miners and gem carvers or stone carvers, so it made sense to go with the miner as well as a mechanic, since they are dealing with heavy machinery at most times. But you also have the scholar, bookkeeper, and archaeologist for the purposes of Onu Metru back on Metru Nui, where they were archivers, the archivists. They kept record of the past, which did cause them to butt heads sometimes with the Matoran of Ice, since the Matoran of Ice looked to the future, while the Matoran of Earth looked to the past. Next is your Po-Matoran, the Matoran of Stone, going off of the artisan, the attention addict for their own cliff climbing, entertainers, farmstead, and mammoth herders, since they wrangled with some of the more powerful Rahi, the bigger Rahi beasts. And this is also another distinction between the Stone and Earth Matoran. These Stone Matoran are actually stronger than any other Matoran. Next is the different classes and dedications that might come up in your character build. For your Toa, it does make sense for a sorcerer of the elemental bloodline, but other classes I thought made sense were the kineticist and the magus. The magus mostly because it was the one class that specialized in both martial and spellcasting as a type of fighting style, not just one or the other. And this made perfect sense for the Toa, since they both had a martial capability as well as a focus on their elemental power, though some Toa did focus on their mask power, which is technically a type of artifact that they wear on them, on their faces, so it's not a part of them. So make sure you have that in mind when building your Toa. the mask power is not their power. They just tap into it like a magic item. Other classes that I thought would make sense is the fighter class for more of those martial weapon proficient Toa. Next is the dedication of the Geomancer, the Archer, the Dual Weapon Warrior, the Swordmaster, and the Horizon Walker, which is different from the Horizon Walker Ranger of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Just wanted to point that out. For your Geomancer, it made sense to go with these different territories based off of the element. The aquatic for the water, the Arctic for the ice, mountain for stone, underground for earth, and sky for air. Now, there is the desert with fire elementals, but that did not make sense for our fire-based Toa and Matoran. Now for the dedications per type. For your Ice Matoran, the Lore Master, Snare Crafter, and Trapsmith made the most sense, since one of their jobs is making traps. Next is the Fire Matoran, the Sentinel, and the Shield Marshal for your Captain of the Guard Matoran, and then the Lumberjack. This was because for the lava boarding, you actually had special boards made from the charred trees in the area of the sector for the Matoran. I think it was Tarkoro. Anyway, Lumberjack made sense since you had to cut down trees in order to make those special lava boards. For your Toa of Air, the Trick Driver, Cavalier, and Vehicle Mechanic make the most sense, especially if you're going more of the Lee Metru Air Matoran. For your Toa of Earth, the Lore Master and the Folklorist make sense. Once again, going off of the fact that they look to the past for answers on the present. And then your Water Matoran would go with Swashbuckler, Alchemist, and Sentinel. I chose Alchemist because they also have a special job with a material known as, I think it was Flux, or Flax. It was Flax. And this was a special building material. Well, technically it was more of a rope material. But still having the alchemist work with flax makes sense. Next is your skill feats for each of the elements. For your Matoan of Fire, the Quick Coercion, Intimidating Glare, Bon Mont, Courtly Graces, Crafting Anything, Impeccable Crafter, and Intimidating Prowess make the most sense, since some of the Matoran are semi-less sociable, but when they are sociable, they do know how to lead. And most of the Toa that are leaders are Toa of Fire. It's not always the case, as we've seen Toa of Air lead in some cases. Speaking of the Toa of Air, the skill feats that make the most sense for them are the Catfall, Quick Jump, Cloud Jump, Influence Nature, Kip Up, Powerful Leap, Express Rider, Train Animal, and Secret Speech, since the Matoran and Toa of Air from the very first movie, which is technically the sequel to Metra Nui, being the island of Matanui, had a special slang. So having this secret speech is a reference to those slang terms. Next is a Toa of Water, Quick Speed, Quick Squeeze, Underwater Marauder, Quick Swim, Sanctify Water, and Water Sprint. I picked Sanctify Water since more often than not a Toa of Water is some form of healer as well. Next, your Toa of Ice, you have your Biographical Eye. A lot of the Toa of Ice, and even the Matoran of Ice, have a special eye enhancement on their masks that let them zoom in like a binocular or telescope. Next is your steady balance, additional lore since they are lore keepers. Then you have your quick identification and snare crafting. Earth Toa and Matoran would have a similar skill feat to the Ice Matoran, being additional lore, as well as dubious knowledge, since they are going off of the past. Information from the past. Next is your quick squeeze, just in case there is some sort of cave-in. You want to be able to get through those smaller tunnels. Next is your express rider, since they do have a couple of Earth Matoran who specialize in training a specific type of Rahi. I don't remember what the names of these Rahi were, by the way. You would have to look that up for yourself. Next is Hefty Hauler, since you are dealing with a miner. Next is the Titan Wrestler, the Earth, the Train Animal, the Automatic Knowledge, and the Automatic Writing. Next is your Toa of Stone, going with Combat Climber, Lead Climber, Quick Climb, Battle Cry, Battle Planner, Juggle, Rapid Mantle, Rolling Landing, and Triumphant Boast. I would definitely go with the Hefty Hauler for these guys as well, and the Titan Wrestler, I just forgot to put them on this list. Now, for any of the Matoran and Toa, these skill feats would definitely fit for any one of your builds. You have your Terrain Stalker, Terrain Expertise, Wall Jump, Wilderness Spotter, and Armored Stealth. And with that being said, that is all the time I have for you today. I do hope you enjoy. What Toa do you think I should do in a future video? A specific Toa? Let me know in the comments below who your favorite Toa is. Until next time, this has been Drehon, and I am offline.